You know, for any of you who have been in the land of storytelling for a while, you probably have noticed it's become really popular. It certainly wasn't popular 15 years ago, but it's certainly the one of the most popular things going around as a key leadership skill and communication skill. When Artem spoke to me about this, he was interested both not in storytelling, but also in the whole concept of thought leadership. So how do you become known as the expert in your area of expertise, I guess. So the two things Carol has just joined us, the two things I focus on are thought leadership and storytelling. So helping people get better at storytelling and helping people get recognised and known as the experts guru in their field. So Artem asked me, could I combine those two things and talk about that today? So that's sort of what we're going to do. I have put a few slides up just to, help with the delivery of the content. But if anyone's got a question at any time, please just ask away or put it in the chat. But we'll get going. So let me just share my slide here. My slides. Can everyone see? The slides?
Yes, fantastic.
Yes. Excellent. Okay, so like I said, this is really much about thought leadership and storytelling. So what I wanted to focus on first and what Artem thought would be useful for this members group is the concept of thought leadership. And where I always start in is what it isn't, because there's a lot of people I speak to that say, we're already doing thought leadership. I know our company, we're already got thought leaders. So it could be worthwhile just talking about actually what it isn't. And to me, what it isn't, thought leadership is not content marketing. So I have a lot of clients that believe they're doing thought leadership because some of their leaders are always writing articles, but what they're writing about is all about the company. So they're just writing about what the company is doing. And that is content marketing, and it will be valuable, but it's not thought leadership. The other thing it's not just being a subject matter expert, although that's a very good place to start. What I find is subject matter experts know stuff, and they're probably known within their company, but a thought leadership is known for knowing something. So a thought leadership is known beyond their company, even beyond their industry. So, they're sort of the go-to person across the industry. So, again, to be a thought leader, I think you've got to start at being a subject matter expert, and then you can grow into a thought leader. Thought leadership's not media training. So again, a lot of people go, we want to our people to be thought leaders, so we just go send them on media training programs or social media programs. But to me, it's all about the content, and this is sort of the polish at the end. It's not just being active on social media, because you've got to have a real strategic focus on what you're being active about. What you post and what you share and what you like and what you comment on is just as important as what you don't get involved in social media, because you really want to be clear. Your audience really want to know, if you want to be a thought leader, your audience sort of have to know, this is what I'm known for, and if you're not strategic about that and posting around everything, you could be, it's very hard to do what you're not known for. And what it's not about, thought leadership, is I had a thought once. So thought leadership is continually developing your IP and putting it out there. Okay, so let's talk about what thought leadership is now. So what actually it is. It's being known for knowing something. So again, the difference between a subject matter expert is they're not normally known for it. They know their stuff, but they're not putting themselves out there. So it's actually being known for knowing something. It's coming from a place of service. So a lot of people struggle with the concept of saying, I don't want to be this annoying person that constantly puts stuff out on LinkedIn or social media. Who do I think I am, calling myself a thought leader? And what I respond to that is, you never call yourself a thought leadership. Thought leadership is a title, for want of a better word, that people place on you. It's like it's like saying you're good looking. You don't decide if you're good looking. Other people decide if you're good looking. And it's exactly the same as thought leadership. You don't decide if you're a thought leader. Others do.
Okay.
But if you come from a place of service where you're constantly trying to say, what I think is of value to a certain amount of people. So I sort of call them, find your tribe who would benefit from this, and always come from a place of service. So to me, if you're coming from that place of service, it helps you get out of your own way of thinking, these comparisons of like, who am I? Who do I think I am type thing. It's always trying to provide valuable content to your tribe. So again, when you're coming from this place of service, it's not about self-promotion. It's not about you. It's about providing valuable content to your tribe. And if you're constantly doing that, obviously the commercial benefits will come your way and the opportunities will come your way, and your profile will increase and all that. It's being strategic and consistent. So, if you want to be known and if you want to provide valuable content to your tribe, you can't write one article and then they don't hear from you for 6 months. So it's thinking about how you can constantly do that. You got to find your own way to do that. So, for me, I try to write a post once a week. Now, I may not always, but I try. I try, if I come across stuff that I think would be really valuable for the tribe I serve, I share that with them. So it's just finding ways that, work with you, but it's being strategic and consistent. And the strategic bit there is sort of what I talked about in the past. It's about what you don't post on as well. So, and to give you a real clear example of that, I want to be known as the storytelling expert. And I also sort of want to be known as helping people be thought leaders. They're the two main things I do. I do also run a couple of women in leadership programs, so I'm always a strong supporter of helping other women. But what I don't do is, if you looked at my posts on social media, only probably about 10% of it is around women's stuff. I always support it, I always do it, but I don't, because I don't want to be known as, I want to be known as the storyteller and being strategic about that. And what it is, it's about bringing together your expertise and your passion. I think one of the key words here is passion, because it takes a lot of time and effort and energy to constantly be developing your thoughts and your IP and your thinking and your ideas, and then writing about it and putting it out there and speaking about it. And if you're not passionate about it, I think you'll easily drop off. So, to me, I am absolutely passionate about educating the business world on storytelling, as opposed to using corporate jargon and acronyms. It's truly my passion. So this never feels like work for me when I do it, because I'm really passionate about bringing it to as many people as I can. So there's a great quote I came across by Elise Bauer, she's a marketing blogger and she worked at Apple, but I love her definition where she says thought leadership is the recognition from the outside world that the company, and I think you could replace company with the individual as well, deeply understands its business, the needs of its customers, and the broader marketplace in which it operates. So I think one of the key things there, and that's what I talked about, it's recognition from the outside world. It's not you saying you're a thought leader, and it's not just being a thought, I guess you could be a thought leader in your company, but this is really from the outside world, which would sort of give you the title of thought leadership. So I really like that, and the way it brings in the deep understanding of the business and the needs of its customers, because ultimately what you're trying to do is solve the problems of your customers. That's what you're trying to do, and that's where you come from, a place of service. I want to talk about why you do it. So there's a few things here about who sort of gets the benefit out of this. And what I find is the people that come to my training workshops and who are interested in becoming thought leaders, they're either business owners, so they're actually working towards an exit strategy. So if you've got a company and you're the CEO, the founder, you can raise your profile through thought leadership. So you, as an individual, you become known as the expert in this field. And by default, that is raising the profile of your company. So if you get to the point where you sell your company or you hand it over to someone else, the fact that you're known as the thought leader doesn't go away. So the fact that you're known as the expert in this is not removed. So it's a really great exit strategy, because you could sell your company, but you could still go, yeah, but you know what, I'm still going to speak about this. I'm still going to write about it. I might write a book about it. I might go and consult about it. So it's how you start to develop this. And becoming a thought leader is a long journey. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes years of sort of, again, providing valuable content. The other people, like, they just really want to increase their professional social media presence in a more strategic manner. So it's increasing their profile, but it's just not being, it's just not being active on social media for social media's sake. It's actually using social media quite strategically. It's increased sales. So again, whether you run your own business or whether you're in a company, it absolutely increases sales. I know for me, in storytelling, I've been doing storytelling for about 15 years. I came across this thought leadership methodology about 6 or 7 years ago, and it'd be fair to say I have probably quadrupled my sales from 5 years ago to now. And it's all through being known. It's time in the game, but being very strategic about, I want to be known for this. So it absolutely is a way to increase your sales. Some people just want to really, like, it's like a legacy thing. They really want to influence the industry. They want to have greater impact, greater contribution. So it really is a legacy thing. And they've got no desire for commercial sales or anything like that. But, it's all achieving the same thing. Again, this is value creators. They literally want to serve their customers by providing valuable, content, thought-provoking. Maybe they want to be a little bit more provocative, so how they can do that to create value for their customers. Again, whether it's a commercial lens or not, it doesn't matter. They can do it that way. Some people, this is where I find a lot of people that don't necessarily want to be known as absolute industry experts. They just want a process to develop their thinking. So I have a lot of senior people in companies that go, look, I don't want to be speaking around the world. I don't want to be writing books, but I have to present a lot of ideas to my company, and I need a process to deepen my thinking around it. So again, when I run the training and I introduce this concept of how do we deepen our thinking and develop it, a lot of people are going, well, I've just never thought this hard about this before, and this is what the process does. It actually helps you think deeper and broader, so your ideas become better. Some people purely do this because they're speakers. They want to be better speakers. So how do I develop my content to be a better speaker? Now, if you want a package speaking gig, of course you're going to go do some speaking, presentation training. But this is really, I'm a key believer that if you have got unbelievably valuable content, it doesn't matter if you're not the most polished speaker in the world, because if people love your content and if you're developing stuff where people are going, I've never thought about it that way before, that looks like really interesting, that's really good, that's really deep, it's really elegant, it's really thorough, then you don't need to be the most polished speaker in the world. So again, a lot of people come to me and go, I just want to be better at speaking, I want to be better at writing, and the first thing I go is you need to develop your thinking to do that. And then some people, again, probably a combination of what the others were talked about, increased sales, industry influence, value creator. They simply want to increase their profile to have greater impact and to have more opportunities come their way. I've seen people that have done this thought leadership and increased their profile, and the opportunities that come their way over time, like, getting asked to speak at this global event, or working for a company they've never thought they could work for, and getting all these really cool jobs and opportunities. So some people just do it for that as well. So people come to my training for all those. So that's sort of what thought leadership is. I was going to move over to storytelling now. So like if anyone's got a question they want to pose, just put it in the chat or just take yourself off mute. But otherwise, I'll keep going on to storytelling.
All right. So, Tom, do you have something you were trying to signal me?
Yeah, I'm just interested to hear the interface of how story fits into all of this. And maybe you've already mentioned it a little bit, Gabrielle, with the fact that if your content is really good, you don't have to be that great of the speaker necessarily, but the content has to be there.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if part of that content has to convey a story.
Yeah, it does. And so it's probably a really good segue into what I'm going to talk about now with stories. So one of the things I talk in thought leadership is how you develop your thinking whole brain. So how you go really high level with models and metaphors, how you go low level with the content like research and data and quotes and case studies and stories, and how you develop both your left brain and right brain. So again, the left brain being, the facts and figures and the data you need, but the right brain being the stories that you can share. And what I do is, and this is where my areas of expertise, thought leadership and storytelling really cross, because I think stories are one of the most powerful ways to communicate your message. So if you're writing, stories become really powerful. If you're speaking, they become unbelievably powerful. So, when you're doing presentations, you should absolutely be, trying to include as many stories as you can to highlight your point. And again, that's predominantly where I work. I think stories are the most powerful way, because it's not only it helps people understand your message better, but it helps them remember it, and that's one of the key challenges with communication is, do people understand what you're saying, and can they actually remember it when the presentation's finished, the meeting's over, or whatever it is. I came across this quote the other day. It was a bit of a research, and I actually find it quite ironically humorous, where it says research shows that we are 22% times more likely to remember stories than facts. And I love that there's actually a fact telling you how important stories are. But the reality is, even though I find that humorous, there is some real research and I'm preaching to the converted here, I know, but there's real power in sharing stories. What I've found and what I thought might be useful is to go through the 4 types of stories that I think you could potentially use. So I'll just go through that. So some of the stories are either literal, so these are things that have exactly happened. So, for example, case studies are very literal. If you're working on a project and you've had a similar situation in another project, you can share that story. So it's a very literal story of something that happened. Other stories are quite lateral. So, when you talk about things like parables, like metaphors, they're quite lateral. Sharing a personal story and relating it to a business message can be quite lateral. I think they're lateral, but I think they can be your most powerful. And some stories are like first-hand experience, so you were actually involved in this situation. And other stories are second-hand experience, where you've heard them from someone else. So they're sort of the framework of the 4 types of stories. But then to go through them, one is a parable. So, a fable, a parable, the boy who cried wolf, all that type of stuff. They are quite lateral in their approach, and they're second-hand. So, I mean, parables, fables have been around for thousands of years. So obviously you don't have first-hand experience of that, but you've heard about them. And they could be a great way to get your message across. The other one is these public stories. So what I mean by that is pretty much anything you could Google. So, you'll have stories around, Steve Jobs, for example, there's going to be stories about them that if you just Google them, you can find them. A lot of stories about urban myths. I always used to love the stories about the ex-CEO of, I think, Woolworths or something that, used to go around and find trolleys in the street and walk them back to the store. And so all these stories that you could potentially use to get your message across. I think case studies fit in there really well. So a lot of case studies are quite public, and you can just Google them, find them, and they can be really a great way to provide valuable information to whatever you're doing when you're presenting. And they're quite literal. So they're quite literal. You're doing public case studies of the disruption of the taxi industry through Uber, and you can find all that information. Then we go up to sort of the top part of the circle where these are first-hand experiences, and they're going to be your professional stories. So these are, I guess, for want of a better word, work-related stories. So, stuff you've done at work, your customers' stories, how this has had an effect on a client work you've done. So they're all stories that you've been involved in that you can sort of speak from a first-hand experience, but they're in a professional nature. They're all about work. And then the other types of stories are your personal stories. Now, these are quite lateral in nature. So this is about how can you share a personal story to get your business message across. So it's sort of it's not placed in work, and on the face of it, it's sort of got nothing to do with it. But, so when you're sharing your story, there might be people thinking, where is this going? Why are they sharing a story about this? So I think probably the best way to illustrate this is to give you an example of what I mean. So a sample I always talk about in my training is I worked with a client, and she was the head of risk. So she said the biggest issue that she always had is that when she was working with her clients and the business unit she supported, every time risk was raised as an issue, everyone would look at her and go, well, you're the risk manager, that's your job. And it wasn't her job. Her job was to help them manage their risk. But it didn't matter how many times she had told them that she'd said, I can't manage your risk. All I can do is help you manage your risk. Nothing really changed. And she would actually provide professional examples, so like some work-related examples of the consequences of not managing your risk, the benefits of managing your risk, but she felt like the behaviour didn't change. So in one of my training workshops, we worked on a personal story that could change that could communicate that message better. So the story she started to share was, she said, when I was a kid, I grew up on a farm, and growing up on a farm, there was all these dangers we needed to be aware of, but Mum would teach us what to do. So we knew what to do when we came across spiders in the timber heap. We knew about all the potential traps in the dam after heavy rain, and we knew what to do if we ever came across a snake in summer. And I remember this really hot day, Mum was yelling at me to get my bike from the front gate. So I ran down the path and then just froze, because in front of my bike was this massive copperhead snake. But I remembered everything Mum taught us to do. So I played statues, and I slowly walked backwards until there was enough space between me and the snake, and I ran back to the house to tell Mum. And I'm sharing this with you because it reminds me of the role we play in risk. All I can do is give you the skills, knowledge and advice, so when you come across your own copperhead snake, regardless of what that looks like, you will know what to do.
Excellent.
Now, Rosemary started to share that story, and what she found was that communicated her message so much more powerfully than all the other things she was doing. And what she did find so much that at the end of the meetings, the clients would go, so have we identified all our copperhead snakes? They were actually using the metaphor of the copperhead snake to do that. But I mean, I'd sort of pose to you, you probably don't have to answer, but I would pose to you, that probably helps you understand the role of a risk manager. You're going to remember that, and I guarantee you're going to remember it. And you probably would be able to easily retell that story without losing its meaning. So again, sometimes these personal stories can help people really understand the message better. They can help them remember the message but more importantly, they can actually retell other people without losing its meaning. And that's when you can get really great traction around communication, because people can just reshare the story. So what I find is those personal stories, especially, I think are the most powerful stories you can have in your toolkit. It's where I spend the vast majority of my work teaching leaders how to share those personal stories and almost giving them permission, because a lot of the time people go, I just never even thought of sharing a personal story like that in a business sense, or almost going, I didn't think it would be professional or respectable or credible. The really cool thing that's happened with storytelling that I've noticed over the last decade is that it is actually now being seen as an absolute credible and professional way to communicate, and a more effective way. And you may see this in your own work. There's a lot of push, for leaders to be more human and more authentic and more real and show vulnerability and all this type of stuff. And sharing those personal stories can really do that. So I think all 4 stories have a place. I think your personal and professional stories can have the greatest impact. I think the public stories can provide some really key lessons for people. And I'd probably use the parable stories sparingly, only because they don't reveal a lot about you, where the personal stories can actually reveal a bit more about you. And so that's where I guess storytelling and thought leadership work perfectly well. So, the vast majority of people I train on storytelling, it's not for thought leadership. It's just how do I communicate more effectively. But from the thought leadership aspect, one of the key things you have to do is communicate more effectively. So this is why I love the combination of both storytelling and thought leadership. So, I mean, that's all I really wanted to share with you. I did